The man who sends people to jail is now facing jail time himself. What an irony. This is the case of the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Abdul Rashid Bawa, whom Justice Chizoba Oji of the Federal High Court in Abuja has ordered to be remanded in Kuje prison. Justice Chizoba convicted Mr. Bawa in relation to his agency's failure to comply with an earlier order of the court. In her ruling, Justice Oji held that the anti-graft boss is in contempt of the order of the court made on November 21, 2018, directing the commission to return to an applicant his Range Rover and the sum of 40 million naira. Reacting to the judgment, the Efcc says it is shocked by the ruling and that it creates a wrong impression of the person of Mr. Bawa as encouraging impunity. The anti-graft agency has appealed the ruling. Lawyers Inebehe Eviong and Liboros Oshoma join us in the studio. Thank you for being here, gentlemen. The first impression I had when I saw this was that a man took over for another man, took another man's job. And after I took on the job, he's now taking on his headache. At the same time. What do you say? What do you say, Liboros? Let's start with you.
That's why we say the job of a government official is ade finito. So yes. When it is the office and not certainly the person. Yes. So if you occupy an office, whatever you do in that office will live after you. Yeah. And so whoever is coming will bear the burden of your misgivings in that office. And so that's why a lot of people have advised that you shouldn't abuse your office. And now the current chairman is having to carry the load and the misgivings of his predecessor in office. Predecessor in office. Yeah. So quickly, you find out that the activities of Magu in office will consistently rear its ugly head, because also, by extension, the lackadaisical posture of the president in that quote and unquote, we are fighting corruption. And so it was like a blanket offer to Ibrahim Magu. And so EFCC went all out and consistently violated court orders and the provisions of their own rules. And today you have a new chairman who is trying to, according to their report, sanitize the process and comply with the rule of law. But unfortunately, the law is still catching up with the activities of his predecessor in office, and he is the one that will bear the brunt. Yeah. So, sadly so.
Yeah, this is an interesting story. Is it hubris that is at play here? That he thinks that he's stronger than the system?
Thank you. I appreciate the point my learned colleague has made regarding the fact that Bawa might have just inherited the albatross of Ibrahim Magu. But for me as a person, the question is, for how long has Mr. Bawa been in office? He has been in office for a reasonable period of time. Yes. I would have expected that upon assuming office, he would have examined the handover note of Mr. Bawa, of his predecessor, Mr. Magu, to see the things he had done, the things that were left undone, and the areas that required urgent and spirited resolution. So for me, I personally do not favor the excuse of the EFCC that, look, this is merely an inheritance of a problem that my predecessor left. He had a responsibility to obey when an order of court is subsisting. You don't wait for months, you don't wait for years to bring that order into obedience, to comply with that order. But at the same time, the problem itself is intrinsic to the commission. There seems to be a problem with the modus operandi of the EFCC as an organization. For me, I am very delighted that this particular order has been made, at least for the first time in this country. Yeah. You know, we have seen that the head of a law enforcement agency can be subjected to the committal process of the court. The only disappointment I have again is that even that this order has been made and to my knowledge has not been set aside, it does appear that it may have been an order in futility. Why is Mr. Bauer not in Kuje prison?
That's a question.
The court has basically relocated him from his house and has given him another residence. So when the IG says, when the police says whether they are aware or they are not aware, the point remains that there is a valid order of court which does not allow Bauer to sleep in his house.
Yeah.
So why is he not sleeping in his new house, which is supposed to be Kuje prison? That is the question Nigeria should have.
Maybe the problem is that there's no AC there.
No, some corrections need to be made. If you read the statement from the EFCC, it said Bauer assumed office in March. And by June, he gave the order to release the car, which had been released according to them. And then also gave an order to release the 40 million. In compliance with the November 18th, 2018 court order. And that so they are at the process of releasing the 40 million, but according to them, the bureaucratic nature.
This is a Kafkaesque story. Yeah?
So that's the bureaucratic nature of releasing such funds. Sometimes such funds are not domiciled with them. They are in, what do you call it, the TSA account and all of that. And so that is what is delaying that process. That also, the Form 48 and Form 49 were not served on them. Service of Form 48 and Form 49 is what cloaks the court with the jurisdiction. But on the issue of execution of the order, I would have expected that the IG should execute that order, but this is Nigeria. But they also claim to have filed an appeal. So an application to stay the execution of that order pending their appeal on the ground that there was no service, they were not aware that they had complied. No, the EFCC, that they have appealed immediately the moment they became aware of that.
No, in the case of the IG, that's what I'm saying.
The IG is claiming non-service of the order. That is Nigeria. If government wants to avoid executing an order, they tell you we are not aware of it, we have not been served. But in the case of EFCC, EFCC said they had complied with the judgment before this order was made. Like my friend and brother has said, I am happy. And the same thing with a lot of lawyers, that a court had decided to put its foot down to say, look, we can no longer close our eyes to the way government agencies violate our orders. I wish the Attorney General of the Federation also, a court will cite him for contempt also. And committees will say, we are not aware of the order, or we are still studying it. Right from the days of Obasanjo, Bayojo will tell you we are studying a Supreme Court that had ordered you to release funds to a state government. You say you are studying it.
How long does
it take to...
did they go to school?
Are they in school studying a judgment?
Exam?
So this, for me...
Even in the exam, there's an examination date.
Exactly. So for me and a lot of lawyers, this is timely. And also, for me also, I think I had raised this issue with Magu. Inebe was there at that time, stakeholders meeting, and I told the chairman of EFCC then, we do not have problems with your agency. The problem seems to be the modus operandi of the EFCC in fighting crime. There are procedures that you must also follow. The law must be complied with. But a situation when you think once you wear uniform or once you are a security agency, then you are above the law, you can break the law the way you like in fighting crime or in fighting corruption. And then the next thing you turn around to say corruption is fighting back, should not be encouraged in a sane society.
Maybe what we are saying here is bureaucracy jamming bureaucracy. There's bureaucracy of the EFCC and then the bureaucracy of the police, of the IG. What does that tell you about justice? Although they say that the wheels of justice grind slow, but then grind small. This one is not grinding at all.
Justice denied.
Yes, this one is not grinding at all because it didn't just say that the engine has not even started to grind. All the things are inside this.
Look, my brother has made very his points regarding the position that the EFCC has taken in clarification is valid. However, it does appear that some facts are still in the realm of obscurity. I know that under Section 72 of the Sheriff and Civil Process Act, there's a procedure for committal where a person is in disobedience of a court order. This is contempt ex face curia, committed outside the face of the court. And I also know that under the judgment enforcement rules, and indeed under the rules of our court, Mr. Bauer ought to have been served with what we call Form 48, which is notice of consequence of disobedience of the valid orders of the court. That is a form issued by the registrar upon application by the judgment creditor. And annexed to that form is usually the order sought to be enforced. Now, when that party does not comply within 2 days, the registrar can also, upon an application, issue what we call Form 49, which is notice to show cause while the contemnor should not be committed to prison. The law says these forms must be served personally on the alleged contemnor. However, where personal service is not possible, there is allowance for substituted service by order of court. We do not know whether, again, there was an application for substituted service. Now, when that has been done, the judgment creditor can now bring an application by way of motion or notice to have the contemnor committed. EFCC did not say in their statement that they were not aware of the contempt proceedings. They said, oh, these forms were not personally served. So we don't know whether they were served by substituted means. But for me as a person, for me as a Nigerian, I find it rather baffling that an agency that is fighting corruption will be seen to be in disobedience of the order of the court. We must do something about it. Because
itself. That's what I was going to. Yes.
Why this is important, Mr. Master, is that in this country today, a policeman will cock his gun, point at you and tell you, I'll kill you and nothing will happen. A soldier will tell you, I'll waste you and nothing will happen. There has been a culture of impunity that has festered for too long. And the reason why it is so is because of the lack of policy of consequence. Those who hold public office in this country believe that they can disobey. In fact, police will turn to you. EFCC will turn to you, go to court. They turn to you. We lawyers, we know what we go through when we have clients that have cases with them. They are the ones who will tell you, go to court. Why do they turn us to go to court? Because they believe the orders of the court are useless. So for the fact that we have a judge that had the courage to say, EFCC chairman, go and sleep in Kuje prison. Forget about your wife and children today. I am excited as a Nigerian because this is going to send a message that in this country there are laws and that when you flout those laws, there should be consequence for it. Now, there could have been administrative explanations for the delay, but I personally do not buy it. I don't buy it. The money in question, the 40 million, the court didn't ask EFCC to pay this money as damages so that we will say there was no budgetary provision. This is money that belongs to the judgment creditor who was tried, arraigned in court in 2016 on charges of receiving gratification, and the court found that the charge was not proved and ordered that his properties be released 4 hours. So the fact that Bauer had months to do this and he didn't is indefensible. We must insist that those who hold public offices, particularly law enforcement agencies, must strictly comply with the order because at the end of the day, Mr. Masaya, it is not the EFCC that determines guilt. The EFCC can only arraign you, try to prove their case. But when you have submitted yourself to the jurisdiction of a court of competent jurisdiction, Section 287 of our Constitution says you must enforce the judgment of that court. You cannot go to court to try an individual. The court acquits and discharges him, and you say, no, I'm going to hold on to your property. What you are saying is that you are disagreeing with the verdict of the court and that you are not going to obey that verdict. And that is not acceptable.
Now, before you go there, what we have here is impunity.
Yes, it is.
But we still have impotence because the man is still enjoying air conditioning in his house.
I also want to bring another dimension to all of this, which is asset management. Seized asset management. Some of us have advocated that EFCC should not be in charge of assets seized because nobody is talking about the interests.
Who should be in charge?
There should be a separate body.
Do you know anybody in any agency now that should take care of that?
You have Asset Management Company of Nigeria.
Yes.
They should be able to manage every asset, whether interim or not, forfeited by or even exhibits. Because you find situations where you say these assets are exhibits. And the person had been prosecuted and discharged and acquitted. Since 2018, that asset had been in custody of the EFCC. 40 million, the value of 40 million in 2018 is not the same with the value of 40 million in 2022. And also, if that asset is in an interest-yielding account, who is in charge of the interest? At the end of the day...
Are you saying that Efcc has become a realtor?
Yes, that's what they have been doing. You find that you hear a former...
They'll be negotiating with I don't want to mention the name of the realtors we have, so I don't give them advice.
Yes.
So they're negotiating with them and talking to banks.
Yes.
Look, how do we sell this property? What is the value of this property?
I have a client who said he was detained, his assets seized on frivolous charges, and at the end of the day, he's been in court. We're still in court with the EFCC today over all of the misgivings, simply because an official of EFCC had personal grabs, and so he decided to use his power. That's a matter for another day. But when you seize assets, belong whether in the name of exhibits or otherwise, and such assets are, imagine a Range Rover you have parked since 2016 would have depreciated today. And so, even if you are giving the Range Rover back, will it still be in proper state?
Well, they will say there's a balance in it. If your real estate has depreciated, your mansion has appreciated.
So, but the fund has depreciated, the Range Rover had depreciated, and yet the court asked you to release
all of them
in 2018. In 2018 to now is how many years? And so you look at the time value of all of these assets. Yeah. So, and now, that's why I think we should encourage our judges to, go in this direction and deliver more of this kind of orders. So that government agencies and people who are employed to enforce the law would sit up and know that once you violate a court order, it is in itself, impunity is in itself corruption. Yeah. Because there's no corruption that is bigger than a court, the same government that has employed you, a court asking you to obey an order, and you go to sleep. You said, well, we have not seen that order.
There's an implication here. If EFCC is holding on to all of these properties and so on, if you take EFCC to court, are there rooms within the law to charge EFCC? Can EFCC pay for damages?
I think that is an option that should be explored. I did a matter in Akwa Ibom where a client of our firm was arrested by the SSS, the State Security Service, that prides itself as DSS. Yeah. We continue to enlighten Nigerians that there is no agency known to law as Department of State Services.
Yeah, it's SSS.
What is known is State Security Service under the National Security Agencies Act. Yes, yes. The SSS arrested this gentleman, took his vehicle, took his money, kept it. They said, oh, he was going to use the money for trafficking or whatever, all sort of allegations. Eventually, the matter was reviewed by the DPP, and then there was no charge. There was no evidence to support this allegation. They still held on to the property. They refused to release it. They refused to hold on to release the money. They refused to release the car. I had to go from Lagos to Oron, not even Uyo, on the day that matter came up, to personally appear before the judge. And they said, my lord, that we cannot tolerate this. And then we insisted that these things should be released. There were a lot of issues. The court said, oh, we should put them on notice. They eventually came. They had no explanation while they are still holding on to those things. Eventually, the court made an order. Do you know that the SSS refused to obey that order? This is what I am telling you. So when you hold on to the assets of a citizen, in flagrant disobedience of the order of a court, and that asset depreciates, not only should the agency be liable, the federal government under which that agency is functioning should also be liable. And I agree with the point Mr. Libroth has made. Because at the foot of this impunity is the office of the Attorney General of the Federation. Section 150, by the combined effect of Section 150 and 174 of our Constitution, Malami today is the chief law officer of the Federation. He has the responsibility to ensure that court orders are made. But what do you expect? When Malami goes on record, the AGF, repeatedly to even explain why the orders of a court cannot be obeyed, what do you expect the Efcc to do? So this is impunity that has been officially endorsed. And that is why I am calling on the Nigerian Bar Association, because beyond complaining, we have the Nigerian Bar Association, We had Andoka in this country who told us that the president can rule from anywhere. He was subsequently stripped of his sanction.
Are they not telling us the
same
thing?
So, Malami's day of reckoning must come if we must sanitize this country, because under the AGF, this kind of impunity should never have happened. If you have an AGF who believes in the rule of law, this should not have happened.
It is so bad that in some cases you apply to enforce a fundamental right of a client against EFCC. EFCC prepares charges and wait outside of the gates of the court, of the Federal High Court, and the moment the order is granted, the EFCC will arrest that client outside of the premises of the Federal High Court without the court having powers to do anything. It is that bad. And that is why a lot of lawyers are happy that this order has been made and that the court didn't need to wait for this long. And that EFCC also, the idea of we were not personally served, I completely agree with my colleague Inebe that the idea of we're not personally served, there should be further explanation. Were you served through substituted means? Anyway, the Court of Appeal will deal with all of this at the appropriate time. Were you served through substituted means? And then another thing is, how do you serve the chairman of EFCC from 48 and from 49? Where will you see him? Because at some cases, in some cases, they won't even allow him. They won't even allow you.
The judge has said that he should go to jail. They can't even see him.
Exactly.
Which condition is he enjoying?
Exactly. So they won't even allow you through the gates. You say you want to serve the chairman court processes. They'll tell you no. You have to drop them at the gates or at the reception. And you drop them at the reception. They say, well, he didn't get to the chairman. So these are the technicalities involved, where you can assess certain persons to serve them processes. So this, when you say we were not personally served, also you should also be at least kind enough in your detailed explanation where you stated clearly that you have consistently tried to comply with court order. You should also be kind enough to explain to Nigerians how easy it is to serve you processes personally. You know, so these are some of the challenges that
Shakespeare said, when correction lies in the hand that committed wrong, to whom shall we complain?
Yeah, exactly.
To whom shall we complain now? Because as we stand now, there's no progress.
Yes.
We are all saying that we are all celebrating, but there's really nothing.
No, the way out,
the man is still there.
This morning, even as we are talking, if Bawa is listening to us, he can release the money. He can release the Range Rover. This moment.
All those.
But does that even save him?
He can still challenge the order having been made, but let him release the money.
So is there another story? Is there another story about the 40 million and the car?
That is why I'm talking about the management.
Is the car somewhere else where it's not supposed to be?
Do you know that some persons have complained? Some persons have complained about their assets disappearing. That in some cases, even when court gives order, they now begin to negotiate. Okay, we will give you this, and then we'll...
What of the 40 million? The 40 million has depreciated.
Do you know if you deposit a document with EFCC as exhibits, and at the end of the matter to release that document, it is like the camel going through the eye of a needle. I know what I'm talking about, because as I speak to you, my court of birth certificate is with them over a matter I handled. I almost deposited a passport because I was sure, I was conscious of the innocence of my clients. So at the end of the day, I deposited my court of birth. To retrieve the court of birth certificate is like the camel going through the eye of a needle. The procedures. So all of these procedures, if we keep having to go through these procedures, even in cases where the accused had been discharged and acquitted, the defendant had been discharged and acquitted, then where is hope? Where is justice? So also, because you have a lot of, we don't even know the number of assets that is in possession of EFCC now. We don't know. So, and what is the value? What is accruing to those assets monthly? Because you can't keep properties, for example, in Abuja, and they are emptied. If are they occupied? Who is collecting rent? Where's the rent going to?
How do we deal with TFCC? Who investigates?
I'm going to make
who investigates the investigator? You guys always say that who guards the guardian. Now who investigates the investigator?
You just took that out of my thoughts.
Yes.
I'm going to make a recommendation. In the United States, they have what they call the Inspector General. Every agency of government has an Inspector General. which is like an ombudsman, an independent institution that probes into the activities of that agency.
But what the Attorney General?
So in Nigeria,
what about the Attorney General?
Well, which of the Attorney General? we need to have a similar process in this country, where EFCC can have another person that can probe them, have the power to examine. Because as I talk to you today, law enforcement agencies are above the law.
Yeah.
What my colleague has painted, the picture he has painted to you, is the tip of the iceberg. If you talk to lawyers who have had encounter with the EFCC, you will cry for this country. The impunity, even the way they treat us as lawyers. I am very reluctant today to go to EFCC on behalf of a client. The humiliation, go to EFCC, go to all their offices this morning. Check the vehicles that are parked everywhere. Yeah. Can they even account for those vehicles? We have had issues in this country where EFCC was asked to account for recovered assets. It is still in crisis. So how do you investigate the investigator? Yeah. The president has shown unwillingness to do it. The National Assembly has shown it is incapable of doing it. Who is going to salvage our country? Because as I talk to you, you cannot say you are fighting corruption and the agency that is spearheading that fight is not accountable to anybody. That has to change.
Let's take it a little bit higher. In other societies, I don't want to use Senate society, in other societies, for example, a policeman who is going to make arrest wears body camera. The essence of wearing body camera is to ensure that he does not abuse his office as a policeman. And the man who is going to review the activities of what transpired, review that body camera, is not part of his team. There's a different and distinct agency that is going to review that body camera, how evidence was obtained, because the court is going to look at how evidence was obtained in determining the matter. Here, you have an agency of government who does not have anybody that oversees or supervises the activities.
Do you think if you have anybody who oversees it makes any difference? You have Attorney General, it's not doing anything. Even in the US that you're talking about, where you have body cameras, even with those people who are supposed to be detached, who are supposed to analyze the body cameras, because in this case, in some cases, they are racist. Yes. They see different things than what the public sees.
Yeah, exactly.
So I agree. My eye is different from your eye.
I agree, but that at least you can't. You give room for 20% abuse. But largely, this is how you also watch those who are watching the larger society. But in the case where you don't even have any at all, there is none. But there is none to check abuses. What it means is that you've given absolute power to one man. And we all know that...
Now this brings it to the issue of values. Everything is about value. Whether you have all the laws, because we have enough laws, according to some people, even Lord Denning, Lord Denning, he said there are the laws there. What is important is who are the people?
It is the willpower to implement the law, and not lack of laws. And the problem is not lack of laws, really.
Not lack of laws. So what is the problem? What is the way forward?
I agree with you that there are issues of value. But for me, I believe that can be said to be a moral question. For me, the solution lies in stopping impunity. Okay. In stopping, do you know that EFCC interferes in husband and wife dispute? That they settle husband and wife quarrel in the bedroom?
Yes.
The pettiness is that bad?
Yeah.
Do you know that in this country, EFCC still meddling to land cases?
Yeah.
Matters that are strictly civil and contractual?
Yeah.
Do you know that you can wake up in the morning and your neighbor does not greet you and you go to EFCC? There is so much rot in the system. I am telling you, these are serious matters.
Yes.
There is so much rot. I had a case where someone left a will. The matter is already in court over distribution of, the estate. One of them went and petitioned EFCC. EFCC arrested the woman, and I personally went there. And I said, "What? You cannot do this." I know on basis of personal recognition, they released the woman to me. 24 hours later, they took her again into custody. And I gave the man ultimatum, the regional head. I said, "Look, if you don't release this woman, I will call you out." I had to issue a public statement. So when I say these things, I am saying it based on what we are familiar with. We have to do something about impunity. Those who hold public office in trust must realize that there is a price to pay when you derail. So we must find a way to checkmate it. But a tragedy for us, which is why the judiciary still remains the hope. It does appear the National Assembly cannot. Look at Code of Conduct Tribunal Chairman. Refuse to appear before the Senate. of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
We're trying to wrap up.
Yes,
We're wrapping up.
Solutions.
Quickly.
Solutions, really. Apart from the moral question, I also want to say this. This does not mean that all EFCC officials are bad.
But it's the head. We are talking about the head. The head now.
But that said, we all know that power corrupts. And absolute power, they say, corrupt absolutely. So there is no need to have an agency that is not checkmated or investigated. If you donate power to somebody to investigate corruption, there should also be at least a level of checks and balances. We should have the people who investigate should also have a system in place where your investigations will be reviewed to check what you have done. And in the cases that you took to court, it is not, sometimes you find out because they want promotion, every case must go to court. It is not every case that should go to court. And when you also seize assets, there should be also an agency that will look at the modalities for seizing these assets, how were they managed, and returns also made. When you have all of those checks, definitely you would have been able to check a lot of abuses. And kudos to the judge, and we expect more like this from other agencies.
Thank you very much. Oh, no, it looks like you guys are still revving up, but you know, time is of the essence, so that we don't corrupt time. You know?
Yes.
No, it's very important.
So that EFCC doesn't come after us.
No time impunity.
So that EFCC doesn't come after us.
No time impunity here.
For corrupting time.
So thank you very much.